Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Moms. This is Dorothy Pilarski. I'd like to welcome all of you signing on to Midday Moms and today's very, very important topic, adult children of divorced and separated parents. Just for those of you that don't know me, again, my name is Dorothy Pilarski, and we're very happy to welcome today Dr. Maria Wolfs, and we've spoken earlier today, and so she's given me permission to go ahead and address her as Maria. Maria, how are you this afternoon?
Wonderful. Thank you, Dorothy. And it's such a gift to be here with you. I've been at the receiving end of so many of these blessed sessions and your Dynamic Women of Faith conferences. So it's lovely to participate in a more active way today in your beautiful ministry.
Yeah, I have to thank you, and thank you for taking away from your time. I know that as a physician and as a professor, I'm sure that you've got more than your hands full, so we really appreciate your time. Just so for those of you that aren't familiar, some of you might have been joining us for the very first time. Midday Moms is a part of a larger ministry called CatholicMomsGroup.com. I always say it's 3 words. It's really easy to remember. CatholicMomsGroup.com. We're faith partners with the Archdiocese of Toronto, and we're on a mission to revive the vocation of motherhood. And we do so primarily by helping parishes start Catholic moms groups. We've got a workshop coming up at the end of September called How to Start a Catholic Moms Group. And I'm just going to, show a very short video about our ministry, because I'm going to be straight up honest with you. We're hoping that someone here is going to be called to start a Catholic moms group. As you're signing on, feel free to say hello to us in the chat box. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box as well. But I am going to share our ministry video, and then I'll formally introduce Maria, the retreat that she's going to be facilitating at the end of the month. And we're going to be talking about the impact of divorce and separation on adults as they grow up. So let me just share with you our ministry video, so that if any of you do feel inspired to start a Catholic moms group, you know a little bit more about us.
Mothers, by our very nature, we are nurturing, loving caregivers. We are social beings, made for friendship and community. We are also spiritual by nature, made by a loving God to know Him and love Him, and to pass this love of our Catholic faith on to our children. But right now, many mothers feel overextended, distracted, and exhausted. Though as Catholics, we have the community of our church, many mothers attending Mass could not name the mom sitting next to them in the pew they share. Community and support among Catholic mothers is desperately needed in this hectic and chaotic culture. Your parish needs you to bring these moms together.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Pilarski. I'm the founder of Catholic Moms Group. We at Catholic Moms Group are on a mission to revive the vocation of motherhood. We exist to bring together like-minded, faith-filled mothers who crave community and are focused on spiritual growth, Catholic teaching, and fellowship. Can you imagine a thriving, engaged mothers group at your parish? A group of moms in love with their Catholic faith, ready to serve other mothers no matter what stage of motherhood they're at. Can you imagine what a difference that would make at your parish? Starting a mother's group, it's not rocket science, but working with a team who's done it before and who's done it dozens and dozens of times sure does help. The Catholic Moms Group membership site is an online community that offers training, resources, and dozens of tools for parishes to help them start a mothers group quickly and efficiently. We're here to provide you with a clear path to launching a Catholic moms group at your parish. All of our materials are 100% Catholic. We have clearly laid out meetup plans for both moms groups and toddler groups. We are obedient to the magisterium of the Catholic Church. We have created dozens of tools that are going to save you time and energy. And besides that, we love our Blessed Mother. We constantly turn to her for her intercession. You can make a huge impact in your parish, so join us. We are revolutionizing the way parishes start mothers groups by providing parishes with a Catholic mothers group starter kit, and by nourishing and training a community of Catholic mothers group leaders across the world. It's time to start a mothers group at your parish. Join us today. So, if anyone here feels motivated, energized, and would like to start a Catholic moms group, just visit CatholicMomsGroup.com. But the real reason that we're here today, is to talk to Maria Wolfs, Dr. Maria Wolfs, who is an endocrinologist, an assistant professor at the University of Toronto, who has become involved with life-giving wounds after attending a life-changing retreat, and she's excited to share about it. Now, the first international chapter of Life-Giving Wounds is coming to a retreat in Toronto. Maria will be facilitating the retreat in the Archdiocese of Toronto. And so what exactly is that retreat? Maria, can you tell us?
Thank you, Dorothy. And I'll jump in, and I sent some things in the chat because I won't probably come back to them later in case people want to see the registration or the link to Life-Giving Wounds. And while I will be participating and contributing somewhat to the retreat will actually be facilitated by one of the founders of the ministry, Life-Giving Wounds, Dan Miniola, as well as one of the other Life-Giving Wounds team members. So I'm an amateur in this sort of sphere, so I'll be definitely participating and supporting, but the team will be primarily facilitated by Dan, who has, through his initial graduate work at the John Paul II Institute in Washington, felt a call that was confirmed in so many beautiful ways, as the Holy Spirit tends to do when he wants to minister to the people of God, put a great call on Dan's heart to found this ministry. So this was really a fruit of the studies of John Paul II at the John Paul II Institute in Washington, D.C. on marriage and family. And as himself an adult child of divorced parents, felt called to found this ministry, which incorporates the very best that the church has to offer and that human support has to offer. So it's really the best of sound psychology based on the human person, sound sacramental understanding, and a very deep spiritual understanding of God's infinite mercy. So that's, if there's going to be a draw to the retreat, it's really Dan, who is really anointed and has dedicated his life essentially to serving adult children of divorced parents, to help them heal and becomes instruments of healing for others who have suffered in the same way. So that's a little bit
of a backgrounder.
So a little bit of a background to who's coming for the retreat. And obviously the retreat is in September. But I think even for those, and of course, we're certainly encouraging people to attend the retreat that are adult children of divorced parents. But to be honest, divorce is something that I don't think any of us is immune from being touched from. So whether or not, you personally have experienced divorce or are an adult child of divorce, or whether it's friends or family. Unfortunately, the current statistics imply that everybody is touched in some way, shape, or form by divorce. And
So
so
can we just pause just a little? I like getting to the nitty gritty. My listeners are kind of like, okay, Dorothy, let's get to the nitty gritty. And I guess, the nitty gritty is that, yes, some of our listeners here, some of the people that join in, they just won't be able to attend the retreat because, we've got oftentimes listeners from Hawaii, Atlanta, yes, Toronto and Peterborough. So just for those folks that, perhaps just aren't in a position to register for the retreat, can we talk just a little bit about the impact of divorce of one's parents and how that has a tendency to be quite it has a long-term effect on people? And what are some of the biggest challenges? What are some of the biggest wounds? And, why do they need to be addressed? And yeah, can we talk about how divorce does affect adult children, and just give us, because someone might be listening here today, and either they themselves have been divorced or their parents have been divorced, and they've kind of had it locked away and just kind of not thinking about it. And here we're talking about it openly. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts in that direction, if that's okay.
And just to give a preamble, when I'm certainly not the world's spokesperson on adult children of divorce or experiences, but there are some common themes that come out in the secular literature and psychology on common themes that emerge. And these are based on longitudinal studies of adult children of divorced parents that go back now over 40 years. And initially, just to give a bit of the preamble, when researchers, and again, secular frame, researchers were looking into adult children of divorce, obviously they would see sort of immediate impacts. But, we've all heard the mantra, well, children are resilient, they'll be just fine. They can bounce back, no problem. So researchers came in to long-term follow-up of this group of children who eventually became adult children of divorced parents, and were shocked to find at 25 years that mantra of they'll be fine, they're resilient, was not what they found. And in fact, they found deep wounds that often increased and became more prominent as the children became adults and started entering into their own relationships. So again, while I don't speak for everyone, I am going to speak to some of the literature that is well documented on this phenomenon. And the other thing is, and again, if you're interested in some of the nitty gritty and the references, if you jump onto Life Giving Wounds, they have sort of a facts page that you can dissect if you want to sort of look at this in the references. But then you combine that with the pastoral experience and the lived experience of many adult children of divorce, and there are some common themes that emerge. So the retreat, going back to that as sort of a template, is based on 6 pillars. And they speak to the 6 wounds that many adult children of divorce experience. So I'll start off with some. Please feel free to jump in if you want me to clarify, but we can maybe use that as a template for our conversation. So the first wound is the wound of silence. Adult children of divorce experience a significant shame in speaking about the pain that they've experienced. And this silence is often a response to not wanting to hurt their parents who they love so much, who they do see are suffering. And it's also partly that wound of silence is in response to people saying and them overhearing, well, the kids will be fine, they're resilient, they can bounce back. So it's really important at the start of the retreat and at the start of the healing process to truly acknowledge the pain that's been experienced and the feelings of shame that accompany that pain. So often, and certainly that rings true in my life, we don't share that wound. Number one, because we don't want to make our parents feel guilty. And that comes down to some of the other things I'll talk about, where adult children of divorced parents take on responsibility for their parents' emotional health as children, which is a sort of a topsy-turvy world for a child to be thrown into. So that's, anyway, number one is the wound of silence. And so part of the retreat is helping people to take stock, to begin to name and grieve their wounds, and to write the story of their experience, however many years it was. And that really is an entry point to starting to acknowledge some of the other wounds. So again, so number one is the wound of silence and shame. Number two is the wound on our identity. So at a very fundamental core, we are children of God. But that implies a relationship of a child to the parent. And where do we learn that? From our earthly parents. And so when that understanding of childhood and that trust in our parents and the awareness that we're unconditionally loved, when that is deeply shaken, we have to our identity as children of God is deeply wounded. And our identity as children is often wounded, where, you know, things, the joy of childhood, the rest of childhood, the being able to sit back and be taken care of, the play that should happen in children is often disrupted. Yes, disrupted to the extent that that children do not know what it's like to be a child. And therefore, to then project to, I'm a child of God, has to be healed. Our understanding of childhood has to be healed, and what it means to have the perfect father, and to be also children in a sort of mystical way of the marriage, in a sense, of Christ and his church. And it's only through that understanding and the healing from the eternal Father and through the church and through the sacraments that we can understand what it is to be a child and ultimately a child of God. So that sort of second wound is on our identity. Anything that, so I'm kind of going through some of like the heavy hitters that really do go very deep. And so the second sort of part of the retreat is about rediscovering our God-given identity as his beloved children that are capable of being children, and all that means when Jesus says, you know, that, you know, come to, oh, of course, it just came right out of my head, the childhood, unless you become like children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, if you've never really were able to be a child, how do you live that? And so that second sort of part of the healing is to rediscover who we are in God. So that's the as I said, the second thing. The third piece is the wound of distrust. So, you know, when we start off and say, Jesus, I trust in you, what does that entail? It means being able to abandon ourselves fully into the hands of someone who loved us. And where do we learn to do that? As children, where we can abandon ourselves to our parents who loved us, who love us. But when that can't happen or doesn't happen or has been so ruptured in divorce, our ability to become to be dependent and receptive with God and others is deeply wounded. And so we need to kind of go back to the, perfect love casts out all fear, 1 John 4:18, and learn to trust God and to realize that people are wounded, but also be able to have a healthy dependence and receptivity to the love of others. And that, of course, that and the wound of fear, which is a damaged, again, perfect love casts out all fear, the damaged vision of love that leads to unhealthy relationships and patterns in dating, really needs to be addressed in order for us, for everybody, but in a special way, adult children of divorced parents, to be able to live intimate relationships.
Okay, can you sort of, you said something that caught my attention. I'd like you to
Yeah.
repeat it. So did you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes children of adult children of divorce, there might be a likelihood for some unhealthy dating? Is that correct?
Well, if we go with the statistics again and again, if you want to take a deeper dive into the statistics, please do go on lifegivingwounds.org and look into the facts and reference page. But adult children of divorced parents are less likely to get married, more likely to cohabitate, and have a 40% increased risk of divorce themselves. So this statistic, again, not every person, but this statistic in general says that having witnessed the breakdown of sort of the most fundamental relationship for a child and essentially for a human being, there is a fear and a deep distrust that it's even possible to make something like that work. And this is even seen in what they call the gray adult children of divorced parents, which is, people that are in their own marriages and then their parents divorce, over age 65, that their likelihood of staying in their marriage decreases if their parents have divorced after age 65. Yeah, because you think, well, you should be on your on your game by that point in your own marriage. But it just speaks to how much our parents' marriage sets the blueprint for what we expect. And this is what the reworking of God's grace that starts on this retreat is, to rework that we are not the product of our wounds. We're not the product of the failures of others in our life. We are children of God, called to freedom, and that the Lord wants to heal those wounds. We don't just bring up the wounds to sort of, to manifest, how ugly they are. They're brought out just like a surgeon would, excise an abscess, to be fed by the sacraments and to be healed by the mercy of God.
Well, the other thing that just keeps on, popping up for me as you're naming these wounds, and I know that we're, just still at wound number 4, but what is striking me is, the fact that you just mentioned that, even when folks get divorced after the age of 65, it can have a negative impact on their adult children. That's startling. But what it all kind of, what's popping up for me is our neediness of grace, like how much we need grace, how much we need the sacraments, how much we need our Blessed Mother, to sort of keep on keeping on, right? Because one of the, Julia here, mentions marriage is under violent attack and all are at risk. It's often a shock to see, the roots of, marriage penetrated, and just to caution moms that sometimes, we can develop unhealthy patterns about talking negatively about our husbands to a friend over coffee. And then before you know it, the seeds of division and the seeds of resentment and all that. And that we have to guard our marriages right until our dying day. So anyway, So
And I think it's because, and just to interject around that, like when we go to this concept of identity, so the father of lies speaks the lies that you're unlovable, that somehow you were, and again, this is sort of another thing, that you contributed, you were responsible for your parents separating, that, but ultimately at the root of this is the reason why marriage is so attacked is because it is the icon, however pale, of Christ's love for the church, where we go to for our own healing. And ultimately, it's within marriage that children learn about the fatherhood of God. So these are like, this is like the fundamental basic foundation. So if that can be attacked, then you've got a very shaky foundation that the Lord can absolutely heal. But this is why Sister Lucia, now I believe Venerable Sister Lucia, or Servant of God, I know there was a progression in her cause over the last few months, said that Our Lady revealed to her that the final battle would be around marriage and family. And so what we are living in is in that battle mode. And so adult children of divorced parents are the wounded from that battlefield. But there is no wound that's too great for the mercy of God. And where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. And that's why this ministry is really a ministry of hope and healing. It's not about staying with the wounds. It's about giving the Lord the wounds so that he can heal, and so that being healed ourselves, our own wounded healers, we can form healthy marriages, that we can support people that have suffered and sort of spread the healing in a, in a way that can expound that grace that we have ourselves received. So yes, this is the battlefront, and these are the wounded, like we're the wounded soldiers, but we've got a great hospital.
Yeah, no, we do. And we're not here to, kind of talk about this now, but I just did want to like pipe in that, I do know through the ministry, a number of women that were kind of, divorced almost not by their own choice. The divorce occurred because of, a variety of different reasons, and sort of seeing their children raised in, solid rock Catholic foundation and Catholic, the graces from the sacrament, that they have beautiful young adult children. So I also want to give, hope, to the women who maybe are divorced or got divorced, and I don't want them to feel helpless that their children are, going to be irreparably wounded, and that in fact the retreat is the opposite of that, because it gives opportunity to explore, examine maybe things they weren't able to do at home under the family because it was too threatening maybe for them. So I just wanted to shout out.
Absolutely, like, when I look at my own personal situation in my family, my mother was very much the innocent victim of abandonment, and suffered that very, very courageously, and by her merciful heart and her, within her own limitations as a human, really kept us very close to the side of Christ. And I myself went, through, undergraduate at
Right. Yeah,
Franciscan
yeah.
University, like deeply, had never sort of left the faith, has always been sort of, you know, by God's grace, have been very close. He's kept me very close on a short leash, I like to say, throughout this time. But it was interestingly only when I entered into marriage myself that I realized things were
There's
not
some
going to
unfinished
fall okay.
business.
There was serious unfinished business, and
Business, yeah.
thanks to wonderful spiritual direction and solid Catholic counseling and sacramental life, the rosary, which is sort of, you know, this after the mass, the most powerful weapon that we have, and a very focused attention. And this is where, like, I really feel that all of those things were the foundation, and then the Life-Giving Wounds retreat is what kind of put it all together for me. And like the aha moment.
Okay, so
And that's again where I've seen tremendous fruits in my own marriage because of this. And so I'm
yeah,
thankful
so
for my
okay, so
husband's
we've
great
got
patience.
the wound of silence, the wound of identity, the wound of distrust, the wound of fear, and what were the other
So
two?
the other wound that's so again, go back to the stats page for the details, but adult children of divorced parents have significantly higher rates of mental illness, most commonly depression, anxiety. Sorry, the most common is anxiety, but also depression and anger. So those are all significantly increased in adult children of divorced parents. And again, that's an anger is an appropriate reaction to and is a common reaction after a parental divorce. And so that's but sometimes it gets stuck there and it gets buried and it becomes destructive. And it's not the anger of Jesus cleansing the temple, it's the you know, the anger of the Sadducees gritting their teeth at Paul, right? Like it becomes destructive anger. And then, you know, going back to the, you know, the wounds of distrust and fear, anxiety, when the stability rug has been pulled out from under your feet as a child, hello, anxiety, right? The fear of the future, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of not being perfect, the fear of you know, what will others think, especially that sort of comes in with the wound of shame. Those patterns, like we develop these neural networks to cope, but they become core mechanisms to take us forward into like adult relationships. So the coping mechanisms of the initial divorce get stuck. And then hopelessness. So, you know, depression is not the same as hopelessness, and but it's certainly statistically much more common. And I'm not saying this retreat is the, you know, this is why you need the sacramental life. You need, this is part, the Life-Giving Wounds ministry is part of healing the psychological wounds, but these take time and they do need often do need professional support to help work through, but it's a great start. And often with that wound of anger comes the wound of unforgiveness. So that's sort of like the sixth one. And again, I'm bringing up these 6 wounds because it's those are the chapter headings for the different talks in the retreat. And what does it mean to forgive? Like, does it mean like forgive and forget? Does it mean I'll never, my best sort of description of forgiveness was Sister Ann Shields, like 20 years ago when I attended the Lift Jesus Higher. She said, Jesus was on the cross. I would stretch out my arms, but I've got bilateral frozen shoulder right now. But anyway, when he was stretched out and he said, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. it's not because they were lined up begging his forgiveness. He forgave before, when there was absolutely no. So I bring that up because sometimes I say, yeah, I'll forgive when, when dad comes like on his knees and begs my forgiveness and says, I am so sorry for all the wounds. I'm so sorry for all the relationships that were affected because of what I've done. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Oh yeah. Then it's like, okay, yeah, sure. Like that feels pretty good. That's not going to happen most of the time.
Yeah.
And how do we forgive without that? Well, we only have one example of that done perfectly, and that's Jesus on the cross. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. What does it mean to embrace forgiveness? Like, what is, and this is what the retreat, like, what is forgiveness, Christian forgiveness, and what is it not? Like, it's not saying, oh, that's fine, don't worry about it. It's an ongoing process. It's a habit of the heart. I'm just looking at some of my notes from my own retreat handbook that I wrote. And it's a call to offer unilateral forgiveness, even if they never say sorry. So, there's a big distinction around boundaries, and reconciliation is a two-way street. Forgiveness is unilateral. You can do it unilaterally without the other person ever apologizing. But, and it doesn't negate healthy family boundaries, especially in the context of abuse. And there's a really great, on the Life Giving Wounds website, there's a really good 4-part series on boundaries that keep out, like, so you can keep in your relationship what is good, but keep out what is bad. And like, boundaries, there's a lot of work around boundaries and forgiveness in adult children of divorced parents, so that it's not, that can be, and I saw that modeled by my mother, who deeply forgave my father. And again, that was owned singularly by grace. And forgiveness is always a grace. It's not something that you kind of pull up your socks and do because you're strong. It's something that you beg the grace for because you're weak.
So these are the 6 pillars of the retreat. Now, what are the specific dates of the retreat?
So the retreat is taking place at the St. Francis Center in Caledon, which is, if you haven't been there, is a place of great beauty, because beauty has its own healing effect on the soul. So it's just a 40-minute drive from Toronto. It'll be taking place on September 29th, starting in the evening on Friday, September 29th, which is the Feast of St. Michael. And we need lots of his protection in this battle for marriage. And continues until October 1st, which is again the Feast of St. Therese, who was blessed with 2 such holy parents. And I am 100% convinced that she has a great love for this ministry, because I think so much of her understanding of the little way and of trust was because of what she was gifted with in her parents. And so I think she gets it when we struggle with trust and with the little way because of our wounds. She's like, all right, I'm on this. So
Now,
we have 2 great patrons, September 29th to October 1st. And again, early on in the chat is the link to register for the retreat. And some, the retreat prices are there, and some young adults and students are struggling with regards to finances, and we have the ability to support them attending the retreat at significantly reduced costs. So they just need to reach out to the to the email lgwtoronto@proton.me. That's Life Giving Wounds lgwtoronto@proton.me. If they want to request any financial assistance.
Now, Maria, I know a lot of people, kind of me included, have, different wounds for different reasons. And sometimes there's a kind of temptation to, I think, okay, I'm going to do my research, I'm going to do my reading, I'm going to listen to, Maria here on Midday Moms, but there's no way I'm going to public 3-day retreat. And it was mentioned in the introduction that this was a life-changing retreat, for you. What would you say to the person that is sitting there thinking, oh, this is all great information? What would you say to them to give them the courage to step up and register and go for the retreat? What would you say to that person?
Well,
Like, why was it life-changing
for that,
you?
yeah, for if God is calling your heart, the words that came to me when you spoke was the words of Jesus to where are you staying? And he said, come and see. Come. Because and he said to his apostles, come away for a while and rest. And I think there is something to saying, Jesus, I'm absolutely swamped. My life is so full. I can't afford the time. I can't afford the money. But I'm going to give this to you. It's like the offering of your time and say, I'm giving this to you. Help me. And I just feel that the Lord honors that so deeply because he knows our time is precious and it takes a lot of courage to step away, to come away with him. But I know even, occasionally these retreats are done as day retreats, and Dan, who's the ministry founder, has always said that when we give the Lord the time, he pays it back in dividends. So if time or if money is a concern, I just encourage you, and I encourage those that I'd really encourage, each one of the great moms and women that are on this call right now to reach out to one person that is an adult child of divorced parents or someone that is divorced themselves that could pass this on to their children and say, hey, I thought about you. Why don't you think about coming for this? Because the key is the world needs more wounded healers. We need to, because a wounded healer becomes a great physician. And
that's so beautiful. Now, it's really interesting too that it's considered a life-giving wounds. How will attending a retreat like this help participants recognize the life-giving aspect of their wounds?
Well, I can't speak for what God is going to do with every heart. But this, like, Jesus wants us to live fully, to live our life fully. He wants us to live abundantly. And when we carry our wounds from our parents' divorce, it affects our self-identity, our relationships with God and the church. That's another statistic. Adult children of divorced parents are less likely to be religiously committed, and our intimate relationships. And so when we come away and give the Lord the time, he is not outdone in generosity, and he uses the structure of sort of digging deeply into these different wounds to set us free. And again, I have, gone through 20, probably 30, plus years of spiritual direction, counseling, attending, groups. I'm sure there's more stuff, but anyway, that's like,
There's a lot of
And
work involved.
yes, like I've been working on this for a while. And of course, you know, the sacraments. But I have to say, so it's not like I wasn't coming into this as a newbie. But then there were people at the retreat that had just, for whom this wound was like, you know, 1 week fresh. And each of us experienced a tremendous grace. And it might happen during the retreat, it might happen afterwards, but there is something to being together, to being where everybody on the retreat is carrying the same wound, and we all are there for the same reason, to beg God's grace and mercy for ourselves and for each other. And to hear, you know, one of the, you know, to hear people share, and the small groups and the sharing times are very respectful to people's, to the boundaries that people need to set for themselves. But to hear the same, to hear the stories and say, yeah, I felt that too. Yeah, that, because when else are you going to be sitting around and talking to people in a moderated by like an expert psychologist and, you know, a man who's dedicated his life to this ministry, and you're working through things and it's validating you and it's lifting you higher and you're praying for the person talking. And I can't tell you, God is so present. So if you're thinking, well, I can just buy the book, I'll buy the manual, I'll like, I'm not here to promote the retreat. I'm here to promote God's desire to heal. And I just, in my own life and seeing what other people lived on the retreat, I can attest as a witness of how God honors this ministry. He is very pleased with it, and he blesses it in the fruits that come out of it.
That's so beautiful. And so, Maria, can you tell us why you think it's important for adult children of divorce or separation to focus on moving past the broken image of love they witnessed in their own parents' relationship? Why is that important?
Because Jesus wants us to live life abundantly. Like when we carry these wounds, we've got scars and we're dragging this, and we've got this wound, and we're not running like in the way that he wants us to, and we're not living relationships in the way that, and we can't love. You know, and I'm certainly not perfect by any means. And you can, if you want any confirmation of that, I can pass on some names that will, but this retreat and this healing has helped me love better. And that's like, Jesus wants us to be free. He wants us to be able to love him freely and to receive his love, and to love our neighbor and to receive their love. That's what we were made for. And anything that blocks that, anything that prevents that or limits it, is not his will for our life. His will for our life is the fullness. I've come that they might have life and have it to the full. So by healing these wounds, like, who doesn't want to be able to love better, love God better, to love our spouse better, to love our children better, to just even be able to, it impacts how we enter into friendships, because our identity is wounded and we're more envious, like, and I'm generalizing, but these are like common wounds that people have as adult children of divorced parents, particularly the like terrible root of envy, which ends up destroying so many friendships and relationships. And so again, just coming back to this, we want to be able to love freely. And this is one of the great gifts of the retreat, is to, and of the ministry, is to lay down those wounds, let them be healed so that we can love more freely. And again, the healing isn't like a 2-day process, but what starts there and is supported by afterwards is the part of the journey to help us love.
So I guess so will you be there during the retreat?
Oh yes, absolutely. And I'll be kind of sharing a testimony on, you know, how the wound of divorce has affected my relationships and my vision of marriage. That's going to be the area that I'm going to be sharing on. But again, Dan Miniola, who is the founder of the ministry, and Jen, who's another member of the team, the Life Giving Wounds team, who's a nurse, and now a life coach. From both of them are coming in from the US. So we're really grateful to have a retreat team, and we have a wonderful priest that's going to be ministering with liturgy, and we have a holy hour and opportunities for confession. So there are a lot of graces awaiting.
And I guess I just wanted to, mention the Holy Spirit is kind of nudging me to mention that, because we live in a culture in North America where there are 101, different faiths. And so, one might go to work and meet a bunch of colleagues that are from 100 different faiths. One might go to a Catholic school, and some of the moms are practicing and some of them aren't. And it becomes very difficult to have candid conversations from a Catholic perspective in a healthy way, right? And so I think sometimes we have a tendency, well, let's not talk about miscarriage. Let's not talk about, alcoholism in the home. Let's not talk about the fact that my parents were divorced. And we kind of put this false smile on our face because we haven't really had a safe place, to discuss things in a way that are going to protect our salvation too, right? Because sure, there's, every other person, it seems, almost is getting divorced. And so one can talk about the effects of divorce in a way that's destructive and is going to hurt you. And so I sort of see this retreat, as I see our Catholic moms groups, the importance of having a safe place to talk about things and get direction and coaching so that we stay on the route of our salvation, if that makes any sense, right?
And that being said, if any of the moms know someone who's not Catholic and not practicing their faith, or everybody is welcome at this retreat.
Yes.
So obviously you can, as you can tell, there's a strong sacramental presence, but a lot of it is human, is very human. And so people obviously, are coming from all different spectrums of their relationship with the Lord. And it's not, you don't have to be saying all 20 decades of the rosary and attending daily, that's not the retreat. And it very specifically says it's open to anybody, understanding that the paradigm that we're working with is that God is healing, but it's not like a lot of the wisdom, and this is the beauty of Dan's perspective, having studied psychology as well as marriage and family, is that these are very human approaches that are, very in line with our Christian anthropology. So, obviously someone needs to understand that this is coming from a Catholic perspective, but don't feel shy to welcome someone or invite them to the retreat, because they, it might be an opportunity for them, but it's certainly to come closer to the Lord. But there's no prerequisite, there's no faith prerequisite, quotient prerequisite for coming onto the retreat, because God is meeting everybody where they're at.
So let's get the word out about the retreat. And, I always like to remember some of the things my mom used to teach me, and she had a saying, "Nie ma tego złego, co na dobre nie wyszło." There is nothing bad that happens that good can't come of it. And so, yes, the wounds you experienced being an adult child of divorced parents, that good can come of it, but we need to be in a healthy, attend a healthy retreat, heal in a healthy paradigm. And so, let's find the blessing behind the wounds by attending the retreat. So just on behalf of everyone here, Maria, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you have, a meeting at 3:00 and it's 2:55. So I want to give you a few minutes to kind of regroup and get ready for your next appointment. I'd like to thank all of you here who have signed on to Midday Moms and encourage you to visit CatholicMomsGroup.com and ask yourself, is the Holy Spirit calling me to start a Catholic Moms group at my parish? I would also ask whoever has signed on today, if you could pray a full rosary, either tonight or tomorrow, if you've already prayed your rosary today, to pray for Maria, to pray for her family, and to pray for the upcoming retreat. So do I have any takers here? Can you just in the comments say, yes, I'll pray a full rosary for Maria? I know I will. I encourage, okay.
Thank you. Can I modify that very kind request to include the rosary for all those that are thinking of attending?
Okay.
That would be, thank you. And I said, since I'm attending, don't have to single me out. You could just say for all those attending and are called to attend. Thank you. That's extraordinarily generous. May the Lord reward you for your kind prayers and the rosary, which is so powerful.
And I want to kind of just publicly thank you for your witness, because very often folks just aren't willing to come on Midday Moms and talk openly about things the way that you have. And I appreciate it, because I think it attracts more people to the faith when we can be real, right? And so thank you for your time. Thank you for just all the remarkable care that you've given to so many people that I know. I'm not even going to begin to list them all, but thank you for your dedication and your hard work as not only a Catholic, but as a, just a medical doctor. Thank you for all the sacrifices that you've made. Thank you all for signing on today. And we appreciate you and we love you. And I always like to say, we're so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Maria. Goodbye, all of you who have registered. I appreciate it. And don't forget to promote the upcoming retreat to your family and friends. Bye now. Bye-bye.